Alright, guys, that was it. The final UFC event of the year is officially over. Been a decent year so far, ups and downs all about the place. And this card, while it wasn't the hottest one that we've had this far, but it was still a pretty overall decent fight night. Let me get into my breakdowns, my reaction, as well as my predictions, and let's get into it, okay? We're going to start off with the early prelim opener of Jamie Lynn Hort versus Teresa Bleda. Just like I predicted, Jamie Lynn Hort ended up coming out victorious for this one. Overall, she got it done pretty swiftly. I expected this one to take the full 3 rounds. I was expecting Teresa Bleda's striking to be a bit more of a factor. I thought she would have countered Hort a little bit more, giving her a bit more trouble, but Hort basically ran through her. Ended up being that Hort was aggressive throughout this entire fight. You could tell that she was really chasing that finish. She wanted to make a statement, and that's exactly what she did. She chased down Bleda. Bleda did try to mix it up a little bit with the grappling, but Hort got up pretty fast in all of those instances and just chased her down, put that pressure on her, fully aggressive, and took her out. Overall, pretty decently fun fight for an opener and got it done. Moving on to the next fight. We had Alan Fry Jr. versus Gilherme Pat. Pat got this one done. And the way how he got it done, honestly, was very, very interesting. And the reason why I personally consider it interesting is because it felt like Fry just couldn't do anything with him. Reason being, Fry kept his head kind of in line. Pat basically just kept him at a distance, hard countered him, literally hard countered him on all his entrances. Fry tried to push the aggression a lot, but he wasn't as technically sound as Pat. Pat kept tagging his head, kept strong jabbing him. My opinion, he definitely could have gotten this done by finish if he was more aggressive. Overall, I see that Pat wanted to be safe and didn't want to get overzealous. In the 3rd round, he came out a lot more aggressive than he had in the previous 2 rounds. But in my opinion, this could have been a 30-27 all around because Pat was dominating it from the beginning. Took his time, very cautious, read each event as appropriate, countered when necessary, kept sticking him with that jab and just making Fry back up. Fry could not get his head out of the way of Pat's fist. Overall, it was just an easy walk down showcase. It just felt like a big skill gap between the two. I definitely do believe that Fry probably should work on trying to mix it better. Every now and then he did kind of try to force some kind of lazy, kind of sloppy, more accurately, like grappling exchanges, but he just couldn't bring it to a different arena. And it just stayed in Pat's realm of just having superior, more technical striking. Moving on. We had Melissa Croden versus Luana Santos. In this matchup, I thought Santos' striking would have been better. Yes, I know. She's primarily, well, at the very least, she has a strong grappling background. And I know that Croden is a much more technical kickboxing, striking background. However, I thought Santos' experiences would have come in a bigger play. I thought Santos' aggression would have got her to open up the striking a lot more and she would have landed a lot cleaner. Think more so a matchup between Islam Makhachev and the Dustin Poirier. How even though Poirier is the one with the more dedicated striking background, Islam is the one who was actually landing and had more effective striking. That's what I expected. However, that's not what happened. While Santos still won, as I predicted, it was very clear that Croden had the better striking. She was landing more accurately. Her striking looked more dangerous. Don't let because you see 56 versus 93 fool you. That's a lot because Santos had more volume and was more initiating those exchanges as far as just coming in on the entrance. But Croden was countering better a lot. But her biggest issue is that she had a bit of a slow start, similar to what I'll discuss with Cesar Almeida a bit later. But you saw that Croden was a lot more hesitant when it caused the grappling was kind of enforced. She was a lot more cautious. She was a bit slower to like force exchanges. She didn't want to get taken down, and she didn't want to risk losing that stand up, which happens a lot when it comes to strikers versus people who have strong grappling backgrounds. And the issue with that is because the strikers tend to be so overly cautious, they end up losing anyways because they end up opening their striking, then they feel vulnerable, and then when they try to just swing out of pride, then they get taken down anyways. So them trying to avoid being taken down leads to them being taken down. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that they definitely, in general, should be a lot more cognizant of. Our way, Luana Santos ended up winning this by unanimous decision and defending her ranking. Moving on to the next fight, we have Sean Sharaf versus Steven Aspelot. This fight more or less went exactly how I expected it to. In this matchup, we saw Steven Aspelot more or less just having significantly more accurate shots than Sean Sharaf. Both of these fighters, I have to give them both credit. They both had a chin on them in this matchup. This fight was on high from the very beginning. There was no slow moments in it. They both started starching each other. Both of them are finishers. As I've said before, this is heavyweight. Everybody's a finisher. Yeah, but these two are known for first and second round finishes. And as I had said, I expected Steven Aspelot to finish this within the first 2 rounds, due to I expecting him to be the more accurate striker, despite Sean Sharaf being dangerous. And Sharaf was landing. He was landing deadly bombs early on. He had those big winging punches. You saw a lot crash right into Steven Aspelot's face. And he just took it and kept marching forward, kept the distance, kept Sharaf on the back foot. Whenever Sharaf started trying to push forward himself, countered him well, excellent foot movement, excellent showing from the heavyweight division. As I been saying recently, heavyweight has been trying to rebuild, and it's excellent to see these instances of these fighters pushing forward, trying to get their moment, trying to push the momentum, trying to show their skill set. Overall, it really was a bit of a back and forth until close to the end of the first round, where Aspelot kind of started pulling ahead, and he just was landing so much more accurately while tanking Sharaf's some of his biggest punches, as well as blocking and rolling with others. Then, near that second round, when they got into it, he really peeled away near the middle of it before it could finally properly get to the latter half. He started paying dividends with the accuracy of his strikes. You saw that Sharaf, though, warrior, he took those shots and still kept trying. Even when that shot landed, the one that actually marked the beginning of the end, Steven Aspelot landed a perfect right to the chin of Sharaf that completely discombobulated him, left him going backwards. You could very clearly tell he had difficulty maintaining his equilibrium. Despite that, he kept throwing as much as he could. He never fell. He stayed standing up. And even as Steven Aspelot was pouring it onto him, Sharaf still swung and tried to do something. The ref eventually stepped in and saved him, as was an excellent stoppage, but it was a great showing from them both. Definitely looking forward to both of them in the future. And Steven Aspelot, I'd definitely love to see how he continues progressing in the heavyweight division. Moving on, we have my guys Neil Magny versus Yaroslav Amosov. I had predicted Neil Magny for winning this one, but Yaroslav Amosov ended up winning. As I've said before, Neil Magny is very well-rounded, and he has had a significant amount of experience. However, with Yaroslav being a former champion in a different organization, he definitely knew how to change the arena. By that, what I mean is, in that head-to-head against Neil Magny, Magny was getting the better of the pure stand-up striking exchanges. Magny had the better distance management. He was landing more accurately. He was in more control of the pace of the fight. However, Yaroslav, being much, much, much more dangerous when it comes to the grappling exchanges, was finally able to slickly change the arena to a grappling match. In doing so, he managed to position Magny and get the submission in the first round. The interesting thing is, Magny's length as well as his experience often creates big difficulties for him to get submitted. And you saw he tried to implement some of those tactics against Yaroslav. However, you saw him be patient, reposition him as appropriate, and immediately lock in and get that finish the first opportunity that he got to submit him. He had initially tried with you saw him try to go for the arm triangle. Magny adjusted. He ended up trying to go for a different submission, and he eventually just finally locked in the one that would work. If that didn't work, you could tell that he'd have just readjusted to something else. Excellent to see when you come to these arenas. You'll often see levels of grappling, as far as that grappling IQ in these positions, from people like Charles Oliveira and or even Brian Ortega at times. And we've seen it at times with Islam as well. So these specific submission specialists, not just grappling specialists, these submission specialists who are so fluent and fluid in these types of positions that the moment you escape one thing, you now have to defend another thing. And the moment you defend that, we're going to the very next thing. You're always in danger. So I love seeing somebody else added to the realm, especially with some of the matchups that could potentially be made in the welterweight division in its current era. Now we have the feature prelim of Anderson Brito versus Isaac Thompson. I enjoyed this fight a lot. I enjoyed it more in the first two rounds than I did in the third. I had picked Anderson Brito to win this one. This also kind of went exactly as I had said. The reason I had picked Brito because I believed his aggression would have been the determinator. Coming off a loss, all the experience he has, and his natural fight style, I thought he would have basically just overwhelmed Isaac Thompson with pure pace, aggression, determination, and a little bit of experience. Brito doesn't have the highest of fight IQs around. However, he still is a veteran of the game. You saw some of those issues with the fight IQ in the first round, which I think most judges gave to Thompson. I also give to Thompson. Despite being newer to the UFC, you saw Thompson just being the more skilled fighter early on. He was controlling distance better. He was setting up kicks better. He was picking his positions, maintaining his distance, implementing his game plan better early on. You saw him kind of he didn't look like a debutant in there. He very much looked like an experienced, prepared fighter for that entire matchup, which he nowhere near was as prepared as Brito was for this fight, and you couldn't tell that early on. My opinion, I even think that Thompson could have, if he had played it smarter, maybe he could have gotten a finish earlier on. But there was a lot of opportunities from not really capitalizing on the small moments that ended up happening with Thompson. However, with Brito kept charging forward. He kept hitting him with big winging shots. He kept charging him. He kept trying to force the grappling. He just wanted to dominate him any way he could. When that second round came in, Brito still came out extra hot. When he tried to get into grappling exchanges, you saw Thompson stop a lot of them early on. However, eventually Brito just tired him out, then started out-muscling him and big-bodying him and low-bowing him and start picking him up and forcing him into all of these uncomfortable situations where he now has to do so much just to stop him from finishing him. From the shots, to the grappling, to the pace, to just the aggression. all of it, you just saw Isaac Thompson slow down more and more each round. And by the third, you already knew who had won the fight. Overall, though, fantastic showcase from both fighters. I'm personally, despite Berto being my pick and winning, I personally still am more impressed from Isaac Thompson, at least early on in this fight, because it shows me some of his potential. It shows me what he could be, show me how he could fit into the featherweight division. So this definitely could be a great experience for him, and we're looking forward to see what else will happen and how he'll continue to develop in the future. Moving on, we got the main event. Let's start off with King Green versus Lance Gibson Jr. I'd pick King Green to win this fight. It went basically how I expected, or more so how I expected it should go, if King Green still has a little bit more gas left in his tank. However, Lance Gibson disappointed me. I said before that if this was a few years ago, I would have confidently picked King Green due to his speed, accuracy, experience, all of that. Lance Gibson didn't capitalize on the things that made me worried for King Green, though, which were his susceptible chin, his wear and tear on his body, and his lack of proper defense outside of his natural reflexes, which is worse over time due to King Green getting older over time. Lance Gibson Jr. backed up for this entire fight. He didn't show determination, especially for somebody whose nickname is the Fearless. Shout out to Joshua Van. But he didn't push the pace, he didn't push the tempo. He got backed up the whole time. He couldn't even properly land a lot of his strike attempts. And then even when he tried to force the grappling exchange, King Green more or less got up and or reversed all of them. He didn't have proper impact at any stage of the fight, except for here and there slowing down the fight with trying to clinch, trying to grapple, or one or two shots that landed, but nothing major. King Green basically backed him up the entire time, out-timed him, outstruck him, caught him with a little bit. The most Gibson did was he tried to bait King Green in the third round when he started responding, talking shit, when he even himself called King Green talks the whole time like Kevin Holland. But in the third round, you had Gibson Jr. say, oh, that missed. Kind of trying to goad King Green into opening up, which did happen. But what actually happened in that case was King Green, yeah, he opened up, but he just overwhelmed Gibson. He just landed more strikes, backed him up, fully just honestly embarrassed him. This fight ended as a split decision, which is incredible to me personally, because I thought it was a clear unanimous decision towards King Green. If anything, maybe you could give Lance Gibson Jr. the first round, maybe in my opinion. But for the rest of the fight, King Green kind of just backed him up, overwhelmed him. Backed him up, overwhelmed him. Backed him up, had him running. Had him backing up the whole fight. Outstruck him, outlanded him, all of this. Look at the strikes. It was 74-35. And you see the takedowns, 1-2. Lance Gibson was trying to take King Green down the entire 3 rounds. And quite literally how that fight ended was King Green backed him up so much that he ended up shooting a takedown. And it wasn't like against Paddy Pimblett. He shot a takedown, took him down, and was just raining down fists for the rest of the fight. It was a good showcase to show King Green to show where he still stands within the overall diaspora of the UFC's, let's say the lightweight. But this was at a catchweight bout due to being a short notice replacement for what was initially supposed to be there. However, it still is a bad look for Lance Gibson Jr. It really is. Even as a short notice, it's still not a great look. Overall, it was a decent fight, but I feel like it could have been a lot more exciting if Lance Gibson Jr. was a lot more willing to engage and take a bit more risk in this fight. Moving on. We have Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Marcus Buchecha. This matchup, I had initially had Kennedy winning this one. I think Kennedy could have won this. It ended as a draw. I think we all agreed that if Kennedy didn't poke Buchecha in the second round in the eyes, he would have won. But not only that, for this, I'm going to just overall summarize this. This was striker versus grappler, it felt like, in the most basic of ways. Kennedy completely was just beating him in the striking. Buchecha was winning in the grappling exchanges. Buchecha kept diving for the legs, kept turning into grappling exchanges. Kennedy would get up whenever he could. He won clearly in the first round by just outstriking him. I guess you call it close, but it was pretty clear to me. In the second round, however, Kennedy was winning, but he had his fingers extended. Buchecha shot a takedown, and by shooting the takedown, he ended up going straight into Kennedy's extended fingers. This wasn't even a bent fingers, like, it wasn't even a little bit. Kennedy's fingers were fully, like, extended, eye open. See how close this feels? That was Kennedy. And you know he's super tall, so it was really more so like this. Buchecha went to shoot a takedown, and it just went right into his eyes. Kennedy immediately got a point taken. I was interested to see how that would have been done, because Herb Dean has kind of been the poster child of quote-unquote changing the rules concerning eye pokes, and I wanted to see if he was going to stand by what he claimed is now being implemented. Personally, I was very excited and happy to see a point taken, despite Kennedy being my pick and the person who I have a bigger eye on of these two. But I think this precedent needs to be properly established. It needs to be known that no matter who you are, no matter what the situation is, we are now coming down really hard on the eye pokes. You need to hit these fighters where it hurts, and that's their pockets. These fighters need to understand that we can and will put you in fight compromising positions. You're putting yourself in fight compromising positions by continuing to extend your fingers and risking ending the fight through eye pokes. The foul should be taken a lot more seriously. Very happy to see a point was taken. And after losing that point, you saw that Kennedy tried to immediately get the round back. He tried to dominate the pace. He had Buchecha down. I personally think that it was a good idea to let Buchecha up. Even though he let him up because he was in a dominant position, I think it was a good idea. I think the issue is Kennedy was way too close. Should have given him a lot more space and then start putting the tempo back on him. But that's if he was in a good position. As far as physically, Kennedy knows he's tired. Nobody knows how you feel like you do. Former wrestler. I know how it feels to be incredibly tired while you're in the middle of a round. So if Kennedy knows he's that much more tired after having expended a lot of energy, don't give up position then. Because the moment Kennedy gave up position in the second round, Buchecha immediately shot on him, ended up winning that round. Ended up winning the round 10-8. If Kennedy had simply consolidated his win in the second and then continued that momentum in the third, he would have won this fight. Because that second round would have been a 9-9 round. And then if he'd won the third, got that 10-9, he would have simply won the fight. These fighters need to make smarter decisions. That's it. The overall fight IQ at times feel like it's been dropping. Some of these fighters need to relax, slow down a bit, and think through their next move before they act out. Overall, it was a decent fight, nothing crazy, but ended up being a draw. I'm curious to see what happens next. Improvements definitely needed on both sides. Biggest thing is Buchecha definitely needs to work on his striking and not trying to just dive into grappling that much, because again, somebody who lacks some of the grappling IQ of Kennedy, some of those things worked, but he still would have lost this fight if it wasn't for that eye poke. So if he wants to do more and get further in this heavyweight division, definitely has some improvements that need to be made. Same thing with Kennedy. He needs to be more patient and be careful with those fouls, because he did also have a lot of fence grabs. So we have to continue developing. Otherwise, you never know what you're going to have end up facing. And I don't think that he's yet at a level that he could face some of the higher echelons of this division. And I also say Kennedy's really big. It's crazy that he was at light heavyweight, but he looked huge in there. But moving on, we have Malcazelle Costa versus Morgan Charrier. Oh, I called it. I told you. Malcazelle Costa is one of my personal prospects that I got an eye on, as I said before. I expected him to get Morgan Charrier out of there early. I'd say first or second. But I expected by submission. I ain't see the knockout coming. And he set it up beautifully. As I said before, one of the biggest things that impresses me with Malcazelle Costa is his poise and his temperament and his patience. You saw both of them kind of traded kicks and fists throughout that initial exchange, and Malcazelle just calmly walked Charrier into that head kick. Slow, poised, patient, and just hit him with that head kick like a whip. Stiffed him on the ground. Made short work of him. Overall, Malcazelle just made everything look real easy, real simple. Very impressive performance. Let's see what he got next. Featherweight's been looking exciting. Let's see what happens when they actually give deserving contenders a chance. Moving on, we have Cesar Almeida versus Cezary Olechechuk. Olechechuk, younger brother of Mikhail Olechechuk, who is currently also training with the Fighting Nerds. For me, this fight, I don't have any real smoke with it. I expected Cesar Almeida to win, but I expected, as I said before, Cesar has a lot of patience, has good timing, and he very clearly also has familiarity with grappling defense. I expected a lot of that to play a bigger role in it. But this was a fight that showed that not only is Cesar patient, he's slow to start. He has a slow start. And that can go really bad against fighters who start as high intense as Cezary Olechechuk, especially in a situation where they are completely shifting it to grappling. Cezary clearly understood earlier that he's at a striking disadvantage, and he immediately shifted it to a grappling affair. I understand that's not the most exciting to see at times when it's being done without any proper attempts at ending the fight, but part of that is also because of Cesar being familiar enough to not get submitted on the ground. I heard a lot of complaining from Michael Bisping on the announcements about Olechechuk taking more risk in the UFC doing all of this other bullshit, but my personal opinion, the thing that matters most is winning. He's against somebody who's just a better striker than him. He wasn't finding the openings to submit him properly. Don't risk getting knocked out just to be quote-unquote entertaining in your debut. Solidify this first win. Shake out the nerves. Shake out the nerves. Go back to the training hall. Work on it. Come try to be more exciting your next one. But get this first win out the way if you're winning that dominantly. That's my opinion. I don't see any need to quote-unquote take risk beyond what he was doing. Yeah, he could have gone a little harder in certain positions when he was dominant on top. Of course, don't disagree with that at all. But I'm just saying, in certain positions where you immediately go for the grappling exchange and take away his biggest advantage from him, why would you spend extended time striking and potentially get knocked out for no reason? I find that dumb. You know that this is where you're at a major disadvantage. Just work, shift the fight to where you do have an advantage and capitalize on that. That's my take, at least. Fight ended up ending in decision. Cesare ended up winning by just constantly putting an overwhelming pace and grappling affair on Cesar and never allowing him to get comfortable and utilize his biggest advantage, which is his world caliber championship kickboxing. It's a very intelligent game plan from Cesare. Once again, not the most exciting fight of the night, but it was decent enough as far as a showcase of skill set and capability. Moving on, we have the co-main event of Giga Chikadze versus Kevin Vallejos. I said it before. This fight, if the fight against King Green went what I would have expected from a younger Bobby Green, and if it went the way of how I said some of the risks weren't really apparent, some of the things I worried about didn't happen, this fight against Giga Chikadze versus Kevin Vallejos went the complete opposite. I picked Giga Chikadze of going, but exactly what I was worried about against Kevin Vallejos is what happened. I thought that Giga was very well-rounded fighter. As I was talking about with Georgia being in a bit of a slump right now, but Chikadze is there. Chikadze was looking good, doing his thing. He's kind of been on a roll recently, and I thought that Chikadze's overall skill set would have been able of beating Kevin Vallejos. But Vallejos is dangerous, powerful, very aggressive, and then I know that he has that bit of arrogance, thinking that he could just walk through Chikadze, and that's what I expected, and that's why I said that would have been a lot for Chikadze to overcome. And I thought he was capable of doing so. And in the first round, he was looking that way. He was maintaining distance well, utilizing his kicks. A little bit off balance here and there, but he was maintaining good posture. And he had good awareness. And he was looking like, oh, he could get this done by a decision probably. Unless something opened up. And it did. But against him. Vallejos came out in that second round, overwhelmed him. He started putting a little bit of a pace on him, and he made quick work to put a fast pace on him, hit him with some shots, backed up Giga, and before Giga could properly adjust, he tried to get away, kind of similar to what Max Holloway tried to do against Ilya Topuria, where he got backed up against the fence and he tried to get out through the side. Chikadze tried to do that, but Vallejos forced him back with the power, and before Giga could fully get out in the side, Vallejos went right into a spinning attack, hit him with a spinning back fist that dropped him, just completely caught him off guard, and Vallejos just rained down these nasty elbows to the side of his head. Just didn't give him any opportunity to do anything. Smothered him, crushed him underground, left him so damaged that Giga couldn't even properly stand, looked wobbly on the ground, much less on the feet. Kevin Vallejos walked right through Giga, definitely kind of declaring his arrival to the division. Once again, featherweight is looking good right now. Very interested to see this matchup. I ain't gonna lie, a fight like this makes me curious how Kevin Vallejos does against somebody who's also a super aggressive fighter who got a recent win with a spinning back fist in Diego Lopez, who will be fighting in that future main event against Volkanovski. But right now, I'm really curious to see how this style does against some of the other contenders, or even put him against another Gene Silva. Let's see how a lot of these matchups look. But right now, Vallejo definitely made a statement. Devastating finish. Very interesting. But let's see. It's a fortunate loss for Giga. Let's see how he recovers and comes on to the next one. Georgia's been on an L streak, ladies and gentlemen. We had Giga. We had Roman Dolidze. We had Marab. We have Ilya in the personal life. It's been devastating for the country recently within the UFC. But let's see if we can get a new Georgian savior in the future. Moving on, we got the main event. We have Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape. Now, not gonna lie, of all the fights on this card, this is the only one that didn't go how I expected it to. I knew it was a possibility, but I didn't expect it to. In this one, Manel Kape and Royval ended really swiftly. Back and forth, Kape was just throwing a lot of stuff at Royval. He was throwing this, showing his speed, his accuracy, and Royval was maintaining that pretty decently early on. Tried to sort him up with the striking. You see that it was a low striking fight, 17 versus 18. Once again, it was only the first round, but you see, which might be a lot comparatively speaking, because some fights, the whole fight doesn't have that much. But in that first round, you saw how much Kape was throwing at Royval, and Royval was still countering, defending decently enough. However, one thing that kept happening was Kape kept trying to back Royval up so that he could cut off his escape. And he kept throwing faster and faster combinations. And while Royval kept doing decently, Kape caught him with his pants down. Kape caught him while he was still being too defensively sound. In that moment, he blitzed Royval, caught him in the corner of the cage, and hit him with a combination. I believe threw like 4 to 5 things at him, and Royval got caught cleanly with one of them to the chin. When Royval got caught, he shut out. Initially, I personally thought that it was a premature stoppage because I thought Royval recovered. Similar thing in my mind, this felt similar to Yuri versus Pereira 1. It felt like they were still defending. They got shut off swiftly, but they were still in it. That's what I thought. But just like with that fight, when you watch the replay, they got shut off complete. The fight was over. They got fully knocked out. They just recovered swiftly. When you look at that replay, when Kape connected with Royval, Royval not only fully went out, he was limp. Kape was the one who readjusted Royval's body. Royval fell straight down, and then Kape had to move him back to keep hitting him. And in that, while moving him to hit him again, Royval ended up waking back up and then trying to defend himself afterwards. That fight being stopped when it was an excellent decision in hindsight because Royval had already been fully shut down. If I had to think about it like this, I'd probably say that it was similar to Lopez versus Ortega, in the fact that Diego Lopez had fully knocked out Ortega and then he hit him again and woke him back up out of the knockout. So it felt like one of those situations where Royval was already done and then he got reawakened mid-chaos, and the referee just was able to actually see that early enough and stop it from any further damage being done. Overall, I expected a bit better, well, much better of a performance by Royval, but things happened. It's unfortunate. However, Manel Kape looked incredible. In my opinion, I think Kape is more deserving of a title shot opportunity than somebody like a Tatsuro Taira. Reason for that being, I think that will be a more interesting matchup. I think they've been trying, as I said before, it's better for the UFC if Kape wins. Kape, not only is he a fresh matchup, so is Taira, but not only is he a fresh matchup, Kape has not lost to anybody of either of two. Kape beat Royval just like Joshua Van did. Kape and Van has been going back and forth. Kape has a very, very well-rounded style from speed, power, and precision, just like Joshua Van, whereas Tatsuro Taira isn't as much of a knockout threat. He's a bit more of a submission threat, and Kape has great submission defenses. We've also seen that with Kape in his matchup, a lot has been expected of Kape, and he's finally got to a point now where he's kind of realizing a lot of that. We saw that the only person that Kape has lost, as far as like major opponents, we saw Kape lost to Pantoja in his debut, but we just saw that he dominated Royval. He beat Royval clearer than Van did, and then as far as Tatsuro Taira, Taira lost to Royval. And we've seen this way how Kape has been positioned. Kape has been positioned to be a title challenger. In between Kape versus Tara, I think that either way, whether it be Kape or it be Tara, people would be fully on board with that showing. For me, I know that I'd said Van versus Tara is next, but I definitely think let's make Kape versus Van be a co-main event of a pretty high Paramount card. Van versus Kape, put that on the card, and then let's see when Pantoja comes back. Then we put Pantoja against the winner of that. If Tara decides to wait it out, which I doubt he will, but if Tara waits it out, Tara could be next after that, in my opinion. I also know a lot of people suspect that Kape might be on steroids because of the dispositions of his pecs looking a lot more like breasts than they should, which is a symptom of steroids or over hormone production. In my opinion, he might be. He probably is, but he's never been found of being, well, he's been found with contaminated substances before, banned substances before, but not in huge amounts. But he might be on steroids, but if he is, doesn't matter because he's never been caught. So there's plenty of people we suspect of being on steroids, but if you ain't been caught on steroids, it doesn't count. But as for Kape, that power he got, that speed, very interesting, especially against a Joshua Van. It's basically two overall same type of finishers, but we want to see how this goes. My opinion, I think both Tyra and Kape beat Joshua Van. I'm not going to lie to you. I genuinely believe both Manel Kape and Tatsuro Taira beat Joshua Van. I think them versus each other would be great as well. What I think is Kape versus... This is how I think the flyweight should go. I think Pantoja should take a full year if he needs it. But I think he should take a full year to not only properly heal his arm, but to properly rehabilitate it. I think for 2026, it should be Van versus Kape, then the winner versus Tyra. That's what I think. And then the winner of that matchup goes against Pantoja. And then Pantoja can hand out rematches as appropriate because he's basically already conquered the division. That's what I think. I think that Pantoja take his time, come back at either the end of 26 or the start of 27. We'll continue to keep an eye on how the division progresses. That's basically my recap, reaction, and breakdown for everything. Y'all give me y'all opinions in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think. Appreciate all of y'all. It's been a great year so far. Plenty of ups and downs. Hope to see y'all next time. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time. Peace.